Yes, so thank you so much. So, George, the reason why I asked you if you normally watch movies, so in Game of Thrones, there's a very interesting statement that was made by amongst the main characters, known as Tyrion Lannister. Alisema that history itself has been shaped by great conversations. It's actually nothing to do with how people normally met, say, for example, when they went to war, or they went to their farming lands, or whatever it is, or even in the schools, but in such rooms, having great conversations. That is what has shaped history. And I was thinking to myself, when it comes to conversations, there are certain conversations that are very, very difficult to have.
Absolutely.
Very difficult. Actually, we even, someone would rather sit in resentment rather than have such kinds of conversations. And maybe the reason because of this is because of things like fear of being judged. Maybe they will want to avoid conflict, or the fear of being misunderstood or even judged for it.
Absolutely.
Yes. So, and what is it about difficult conversations that set us off in such ways, really? What do you think about that?
So, Alex, this is, and I feel we've had this conversation a long time coming.
Yeah.
You and I sitting on this table
Yeah.
to have this conversation has been something that's been simmering for quite a while, and I'm really glad we're finally here. And as I was thinking about how we're going to do this, I think it's very important to start off with what are difficult conversations. We'll probably take it, step by step. First of all, just establish the what.
Yeah.
What is a difficult conversation, and then of course probably the why, and then how then do we navigate it. I love what you say, that history is made in great moments in history, and the moment you say that, so many people just flooded through my mind. I thought about Winston Churchill. I thought about Martin Luther King. I thought about JFK,
Nelson Mandela,
thank you, bringing it back home. Mwalimu Julius Nyerere.
Yeah.
There are things that were said, and I realized the thing about even just being able to have conversation in general, like say great conversations, is that it's not just about what you say, it's definitely about how you say it.
Okay.
But the biggest determining factor of the impact of what you shall say, the words that shall come out of your mouth, is actually who are you.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So when you think about someone like Nelson Mandela, the fact that he sat in Robben Island for 27 years, the fact that he went through the, unimaginable torment, and it's a wonder that he actually made out alive.
Yeah.
So there's everything that built up Nelson Mandela to be who he is, even before he went to prison, even before he became that firebrand, because he was a very firebrand fighter, by the way. And then of course going full circle, 27 years, and then becoming free, and of course his ascent to being the first president of the Republic of South Africa, as we know it. Everything that happened in his life is probably 27 years plus, because 27 in Robben Island and a couple of other years in the activities that led him to be put in Robben Island. They say that you don't put a harmless, person who didn't hurt a fly in prison for 27 years. He was a bad guy. That's the story.
Bad in what sense?
He was a threat. He was a fighter. And you can check it out a little bit. If you track back into who Mandela was prior to, his long incarceration, and how and what people expected him to do, then you will realize why his words, and the reason why the words that he spoke had such great weight. I think one of the places that really brings out, there are quite a few documentaries that bring out who Nelson Mandela was when he started and formed what they call the Rainbow Nation in 1994. Okay. And there are so many things. You can check out the movie Invictus about the Springboks, and how when the Rainbow Nation was born, what you call the Rainbow Nation, I don't know whether they still refer to it as that. And when the Republic of South Africa was born, there was, let me say, he represented a huge constituency that was filled with anger, hatred, resentment, all forms of pain. And they couldn't wait to take and use everything they had that within the power that they had now to make their oppressors one pay and know that we are now the guys. We are now running the show. It's us now. And the symbol and the figurehead that all that power and all that represented by that constituency lied in was Nelson Mandela. And so when I say who, you get my point. For instance, I'll use an example. When you think about someone who, for instance, like the late, just laid him to rest, Pope Francis, to become the Pope and the head of the church as we know it, is a whole journey of decades.
Yeah.
Makes sense. From maybe when they went to their first mass as a little child, building up to when they went to seminary, building up to the decades that led them to becoming, a bishop, and you know how it goes. So sometimes when you hear a leader speak, you must realize that those words represent a lifetime of becoming the person who can speak those words. And when you speak those words, the impact and the weight of those words is actually not just in what is coming out audibly, but in who you are. And that's why for Nelson Mandela, when he told,
is very weighty.
You get it? When he told his people, and they hated it, these are our partners for progress. And for a fact, they held the capital, they held the land, they held the expertise, they held everything, including the education, name it. And they could not be the enemies. And what happened, and history continues to show us, in that moment is the country could have gone a different direction. And we've seen other nations, without mentioning them, that went a different direction in terms of going the divisive route, the route of, kicking people out because they felt that they wanted what they call reparations through the wrong methods. So in reality, it's really about the who. It's really about the who you are. That's good for the history and global perspectives and geopolitics. Bringing it closer home, what we're basically saying is, what you say is important in the moment you say it. And this is where it's just a general conversation. But who you are, who you have built up to be, the relationships, the understanding, the trust, the personhood you have, is the greatest investment. It's a foundation in which you actually build your leadership, your speaking, your communication, and your navigating through whatever it is you go through. And so if I can just quickly comment about what we have in our nation at the moment, because things are quite polarized as we can see. One thing I'd like to say, because of course we're now the fifth head of state, and I'll comment on the third, who I think unanimously, the late Mzee Kibaki.
Emilio Moi Kibaki.
Yes, unanimously. I feel like you will struggle to find any one other figure who will get a unanimous nod of approval as one of the probably best performing.
Sure.
And in many fronts. When I think about him, because he also became head of state in his later years. And there were actually moments in his leadership that left a lot to be desired. There were pivotal moments where there were difficult conversations that needed to be had. Some went south, but some, in the greater scheme of things, he was able to, when you look at the overall plan, there are certain key initiatives that he was able to see through. One on top of my mind is, of course, free primary education. And of course, we saw the first grader, Kimani Maruge, who at 84 years went in and became a first grader. And the story is globally known simply from what he represented. But the point I want to make is, Mzee Kibaki, the many conversations he had, the great ones, the not so great ones, and the overall picture of his, ultimately who he was, what he represented, and the life he had lived right up to the point he became the third president of his nation, built up and was the foundation for which every decision, every conversation, every action was interpreted. And so sometimes we see and hear what a person says or what a leader says, but it's important to realize that it's not just about what is being said, it's also who is saying it, right? And what platform does that person stand? And so in reality, and we'll go deeper into this, it's just generally high-level conversations that move nations, that move communities, that inspire a generation. starting with, of course, the Mandela, Dr. Martin Luther King, John
Mahatma
Kennedy,
Gandhi.
Mahatma Gandhi, Winston Churchill, but
Abraham Lincoln.
George Washington. But it's very important to realize that all those people represent stories, represent a struggle, represent decades of toil, adversity, struggle. And by the time they were where they were and had those pivotal statements or pivotal speeches that moved a nation or moved a generation, they had actually built up and walked up to the mountaintop. People talk about you on the mountaintop, but they don't realize what it took and what scars and what bruises and what amount of blood you lost getting to the mountaintop. And I think that is as important as what you actually say. And that's just a general speak, and I love how you got us into this, that conversations have moved generations, conversations have moved nations, generally speaking.
Yeah.
Conversations in general. Then we'll get into difficult conversations. Obviously, being a speaker, I also love to dabble in, high impact conversations that move generations, that move people to choose to be different. And everybody wants to have the good conversations. Everybody wants to be the guy that gets in there, right? And gets everybody charged up, gets everybody going and excited. And you have a choice, because most of the time you can drive that agenda. However, as a leader, this is a very famous figure of speech. I will not quote the person, but those who know, if you know, you know. There comes a time, the quotable quote was, there comes a time, ... And in reality, it's true. There comes a time when, and that there comes a time is pretty much what would say segues you to what you'd call a difficult conversation. So in a little bit, we can get into what a difficult conversation is. What are the causes of difficult conversation? Why do we have to live with the reality that difficult conversations need to be had?
Yeah.
And of course, further down the conversation, we'll get into what practical skills, tips and tricks can you use to manage them, and how can you, because the reality of the matter, the people, and I've had one or two wise men say that, the thing about difficulty, generally speaking, you're either in difficulty, deep in the thick of things, or you're just getting out of difficulty. And if you're not in difficulty, this one is to the viewers, you're possibly on the cusp. Perhaps in the very near future, you could be in a very difficult situation. So if you just got on and wondering whether you should continue watching this video, you should, because we will speak about how to manage. So even if you're not deep in it, I'm happy for you. But perhaps sometime in the near future, you will be in the thick of things, and you would be glad to know how to navigate it, how to manage it.
Sure.
Because that's the best skill any individual can have. The ability to be able to manage, navigate, and work through the difficult conversation.
Wow. But before we get to that, something very interesting you've mentioned is about the person who speaks, says some of the things that they will intend to say. I heard somewhere that identity is a function of authority. Identity is a function of authority. So who you are is also a function of whatever authority actually is in whatever endeavor this particular person. So say, for example, there are people who have sort of the authority or even the right to speak on certain matters, and other people do not. That is why those kinds of people will have more impact when they say some of these things, but when other people speak about them, they won't. I'll give an example, especially in the scientific community. I'll tell you that a majority of the population, there is a way we perceive science. There are things that we think are actually scientific, but they are not. But if, say, a scientific authority, maybe in biology, says something, they stand a chance to influence more people than anyone else, regardless of whether what was said was true or otherwise. This person, this scientific authority, stands a chance to influence more than anybody else.
That's absolutely true, including even organizations. That's why sometimes when you hear WHO has issued a communique or has released a report, people want to dial in.
Sorry, people want to?
People want to hear what is WHO, because WHO represents something. I know it's been polarizing the post-pandemic reality. There was equal measure of acceptance and in opposition. So I think, yes, I'd say it's not just the individual,
Okay.
but also the let me say the source from which the information is coming. So sometimes it's not just the individual, sometimes it's a collective corporate organization.
Okay.
And that's why even as we continue this conversation, of course, in the work we do when you're not here having this amazing conversation, we love to do work to support organizations around what is their identity. And going back to what you just said, identity is quickly or closely tied to authority. So the authority is very, very important to correlate. In other words, should your authority, for whatever reason, be put into question, if your authority comes into question, the biggest issue, of course, is what you say has less weight. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
Yeah.
And so, of course, even as we start with the foundation of the impact of our words, the impact of what we say is literally or directly proportional to the impact of our lives, right? In terms of our reputation, in terms of our value system, in terms of who are we, how do we live our life, what is the correlation between what we speak, right? The values we espouse and communicate to people and what we actually do.
Yeah.
Because when there's a disconnect between the two, then by and by, and I think that's what happens when leadership actually begins to fall short. The first place where ground is lost is actually in credibility, authority, trustworthiness.
Okay.
You know, that's the first place, and that's why we talk about approval ratings. So when you lose approval ratings, when you lose credibility, when you lose trustworthiness, and then what happens is that then now the words you speak continue to have lower and lower impact, less and less impact, simply because of the question around how sincere, how truthful, is it just lip service? And of course, one of the things I love to talk about leadership is that leadership is an interesting one, perhaps like marriage. You know, there's this joke about or comment about marriage is the one institution where you get the certificate, right? At inception. And what probably the adage doesn't really do, but we should speak about it, is that you actually begin to take out points, deduct points. And probably there's a similarity between between marriage and relationships and leadership.
Okay.
So there's something called the promise of leadership. The moment you become a leader, Alex has become a leader, he's our boss now. Kudos, we celebrate and say, you know, congratulatory messages on not TikTok, on LinkedIn. But I guess TikTok now with the Gen Zs, you know? And we're like, you know, kudos, Alex is a new guy, Yendi Mzito. But then now, from day one, when we say your first 100 days, in reality, from day 1 to day 2 up to day 100, you actually begin to deduct. Every opportunity missed, -1 or -0.5, up to day 100 or up to day whatever your tenure is. And so in reality, yes, that authority and influence you speak about is actually a very delicate thing that must be held with great care. Because in literal sense, it's far much easier to lose face, to lose credibility, to lose authority than sometimes it is to gain it. Yeah. However, all is not lost. Sometimes, and you know, there are a school of thought that some of these things are like a account, like a bank account. You have debits and you have credits. So you can consciously work towards doing a bit more of the credit in your account and managing the debits. Because in reality, the debits are the negatives and credits are what will probably, and sometimes you just want to develop a perfect balance. Sometimes you want to make sure you have more so that when that moment comes, which is what we're discussing today, when that moment comes, when you do need to have a conversation that's not easy, you have a better balance, account balance. An authority account balance, you know, a credibility account balance. And even the word credibility is taken from the credits, right?
Yeah.
You have higher credit. You know what I mean? And then who you are comes in a significant way to back up what you're saying. Who you are, your leadership position, your authority, your influence will carry you. It will literally be like that little boat or the ship or the raft to carry you through the stormy season. And storms is not a question of if, it's a question of when the storm comes.
Not if the storm comes,
exactly.
But when.
So as a precursor to this conversation about difficult conversations or conversations in general, we must be continuously and constantly aware and possibly even obsessive about what is my standing? What is my standing? Because there will come a day, there comes a time, there will come a day when who you are and the state of your credibility and account will be what will carry you away together.
Wow.
Far much more than what you say. So the words you speak would have to literally be, it's like a raft, like I say, or a boat. The words will either collapse and drown in the storm and disappear, or will be held up. So the raft or the boat or the platform on which will carry you as you navigate the storm is that authority you talk about. It's who you are. And so much as it's important to speak words and have influence or seek influence, the first place to start is ensure your boat or your raft, right, is as good as it possibly can be. And sometimes it'll be knocked about.
Yeah.
Sometimes you might even have a little bit of a leak. Sometimes you might have a section that's even breaking apart. In the worst of storms, they literally tear apart ships. So your focus should be, when you're not even in the situation, just ensuring you keep on building your ship, reinforcing your ship, because there will come a time which is now segueing us into that time.
Yeah.
What a difficult conversation really is.
Yes.
And how do you have it?
Wow. So what are some of the things that define a difficult conversations? How are we to understand difficult conversations? What are they?
All right. I think a difficult conversation let me try and just speak in regular how we speak. A difficult conversation is a conversation you'd rather not have. Keep it short and sweet. You'd rather not have it.
Okay.
You'd rather not have it.
Wow.
But there's no point of
There's actually no point of
really stretching it out.
True.
If I was left to my own devices, let me even say as Alex, if I didn't have to, I would be happy not to have it. I think that's a simple, short and sweet definition. A difficult conversation is a conversation you would generally rather not have.
And I think that's the place that a majority of us are at.
Majority of us actually choose not to have it.
those
If I was to just pick a random statistic from the fact, perhaps out of 10 people or 10 conversations, let's say 10 people, maybe 8
don't want to have that conversation.
Would rather not have that conversation. And the foundation of difficult conversations, or why the people would rather not have them, is because we are quite conscious. Naturally, we all have a strong, or the majority of us have a very strong desire to be accepted, to be loved, to be understood, and to be considered okay. Or can we say, you wouldn't like people to use that term, like mtiaji. You mse ni mtiaji. Wachana Alex.
True.
You know what I mean?
True.
So you literally live your life doing everything you can to keep and perhaps it's what people perceive to be credibility. Okay. Because going back to what we just come from, you want to keep your credit, your account, the platform intact. And in reality, what deters us from having difficult conversations is because you know for a fact the relationship may not be left the same.
Okay.
You may not be left the same. And why this is such an important conversation, Alex, is because we need more people to have awareness. In fact, truth be told, most people don't even know that difficult conversations really exist. It's something that you possibly have at the back of your mind. I'll give a good example. When we talk about toddlers, and for those with family can relate to this, toddlers and the famous, some people call it terrific too, others call it terrible too, right? So toddlers and tantrums. So the fact of the matter is, it's a stage of life. They are necessary, for lack of a better word, evil. It's a developmental part of that child's life. And obviously, because they can speak, they're just transitioning into where they feel like they can speak, they know what they want, they don't know what they don't want, etc. But they're not quite there. They're still coming out of infancy, and they're not yet like child. And so, if you look at it for what it is, that this is a transition, just like teenagehood, just like midlife crisis, or like midlife stage, then there are certain things you will be more aware, you'll be more comfortable, and you'll be better prepared to deal. And it's not just about, I'll just give an example because that's something people can relate with. But life is literally full of transitions from, maybe pregnancy and the stages of pregnancy to newborn just getting back into the world, and all the stages of an infant from 1 day old to maybe 6 weeks old to 6 months, etc. So picking back again from the example of toddler, terrific 2, I call it terrific 2. When you realize that this wonderful human being is predisposed to acting a certain way, perhaps doing shopping in the supermarket, perhaps at church, perhaps at the clinic, you probably will have a better time when it happens. Keyword: when it happens.
When it happens.
So when it happens at church, when it happens in the clinic, when it happens at Quick Mart. This is not a whatever, or Neighbors, whatever it is. This is not a endorsement. You probably will deal better, and you'll come into it from a place of awareness.
Yeah.
So similarly, when you realize that difficult conversations are part of the life cycle of a relationship, so you will never, naturally would not throw away a child, or, sometimes we go the wrong way and try and beat them into submission. So we've learned the hard way that doesn't really work, or it's a mistake. Or I don't know, let them, just completely not commune with them, because in the height of a tantrum, that 2-year-old, 2.5-year-old is completely incapable of hearing you.
Yeah.
And probably when you also get emotionally dysregulated, you can't hear them.
Sure.
So you're two human beings who are completely incapable of making a connection. And you're completely at your end of your wits. That 2-year-old is done. And sometimes it doesn't get better when they're hungry, when they're sleepy, when maybe they're unwell with a fever. And you could probably be dealing with you have your bad day. There could be an issue with money, with your relationship, for those in relationships, etc. So can you imagine? This is like a complete collision. And it's just, let me just say, God's grace that has seen many of the parents
through
who can relate to this.
Yeah.
Because most of the time you live there having a horrible day. Church, you probably won't hear anything, or that visit to the supermarket is something you'd rather forget, clinic, etc. So now, talking about toddlers, terrific too. Let's get into difficult conversations. So similarly, the fact that having a toddler completely unmanageable and unruly is nothing you wish even for your worst enemies.
Okay.
It probably gets worse if you have twins. For those who've seen with twins, or like that's double the trouble. You know what I mean? Yeah, or triplets.
Wow.
So similarly, if you see that tantrum as a developmental stage, it's something you have to get through. You will probably be more understanding. You shall be more gracious to the child. You should be more gracious to yourself, because what's happening to the child and what's happening to you is a stage you have to get through it.
Yeah.
And for those who have been through it, really, sometimes you look and smile. And if you see people in the height of it, and probably you were there 5-6 years ago, you might even be more gracious to them. Quickly jump into the work context. For the leaders who, and this is becoming a very big issue around just the humanity and about emotional intelligence and grace. For leaders who have people who they manage in the height of family life with an infant, a 2-year-old, there are huge opportunities already around how you can be a better person to that person on your team, because they are going through the most.
Okay.
But again, keep going on, especially if you look at people or organizations with a long-term view of the value of a member of staff. Because that member of staff at some point in their life will have a child, or will get married, will have children. The children will develop and go through the stages. As they develop and go through the stages, and just that things have been very difficult in maybe recent times, and people look at shorter employee life cycles. But in reality, an organization, a leader, a team that would be more gracious to someone who's going through those, and most of them are our ladies, our sisters, our wives, going through those stages, have a bigger investment in the relationship. There's a much bigger investment in that who. Remember the platform?
Yeah.
Remember the raft?
Yeah.
Remember the who you are. So bring it back. Let's come out of the big globally known leaders and talk about you're a boss in a branch of our local bank or some company. And you have people in your team who are in that stage of life. They're productive. They're productive at work. They're productive in family. How you would help them navigate those journeys ultimately impacts how your relationship will be and who you are to them. And so when there comes a time, remember the figure of speech, there comes a time.
There comes a time.
Things will be very different. So coming back to difficult conversations, hopefully a toddler analogy helps really bring it home. they are necessary. They are part of our life, just like sunsets and sunrises. There's no sunrises without sunsets.
Sure.
Makes sense. There's no rain and winter without summer. So beginning to even just see and appreciate that they are part of us. There's no day without night. And your life would be much easier when you begin to accept, appropriate, understand this is part of the normal life cycle of a relationship. And the relationship will be more of a fuller, more authentic, true relationship. So I'm going to say, out of my personal experience, because it sounds really nice here that we're sitting here and we're shooting and talking about they're so necessary, they're so important. I'll tell you, I left to my own devices, and I can say in my previous seasons of life, would not touch them with a 10-foot pole. Difficult conversations suck.
They do.
Totally suck. And if we're to try and then call it or look at statistics, more often than not, relationships end in the course of a difficult conversation. It's funny, there's a coach you should check out, Ryan Dunlap. He's great, really good.
Who?
Ryan Dunlap. Ryan Dunlap is a conflict coach.
A conflict coach.
Yeah, and he's put a lot of content out there. And one of the things that I came to learn probably a bit later than I should, and I wish I did. The thing about difficult conversations, Alex, and it's very clear in all the videos Ryan does, is that in difficult conversations, people decide, I'm not going to work in this organization anymore. I'm done working for this person.
Yeah.
People decide this relationship will not work out
for me.
People decide this marriage is over. And one of the things Ryan says, it continuously rings in my head. He says, in one of those videos that just completely stuck with me, is that, the thing about difficult conversations, and there are people who, by the way, don't get me wrong, and we've had, like Beth came and talked about the personalities and women and everything. So we have different personality types, right? And so there are people who are naturally much more pro difficult conversation. They would naturally get into it. Okay. And I'm sure you've met such people.
Of course.
And I guess we'd say, the colloquialism is mtiaji. Yeah, they're not afraid of being perceived. Kama mtiaji. And there are people who would rather not, left to their own devices, and it's actually a scale. So if it's a scale, on one extreme end, people who are very comfortable with conflict, and the other extreme end, people who would rather not. I would rather do anything. I would even rather go to great length and great pain than say, I'm uncomfortable. Let's have this conversation, right?
Yeah.
And so the thing is, sometimes you find in relationships, in organizations, in teams, there's someone who's on that side of the scale and someone else who's on the other extreme end of the scale. And so people on the scale who are much more argumentative, they're tough, they're whatnot, versus those who are much more agreeable, collaborativity. There are people who are so predisposed to having, I wouldn't call it difficult conversations, I'd call them fights and arguments. And so Ryan says that apparently there's a day you will have a fight with someone, and for you, it's just another day. You go to the office and you're shouting at someone, or you're screaming at top of your lungs, and you're going at it. And so according to him, for that person, this is the day.
Yeah.
Leo ni leo. That is the day they decided, I'm not working for this person ever again.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So you just, like Alex, you and I had this conversation. For you, it's just another day. Maybe you're my boss and you're coming at me. And I'm really pretty much trying to defend myself and whatnot. And there's internal dialogue. So there's what we're talking about here above the surface. Then there's the internal dialogue. So in my mind, I'm like, man, I'm done.
I'm done, man.
And you, when you're done, you're done. Let's go for lunch. It was just another day, right?
Yeah.
Similarly, in a marriage setting, in a family setting with siblings, especially what I'd say has become incredibly difficult nowadays. Adult relationships in families are very difficult. Brother to brother and sister. And that's why the courts, we have so many cases of people going to court about all kinds of things that possibly shouldn't have happened. And so the fact of the matter is difficult conversations are life altering. They will literally change your life.
Okay.
They will change your economic situation. They will change your families. They will change your destiny. And if we can at least agree, I know sometimes people want to agree to disagree, but if we could agree that they are literally part of our journey of life. It's not a question of if to have them or not. It's a question of when will they happen. And one of the funny things, again, I'll give one more and Dunlap reference I thought was very interesting. Why it's so important, and we'll get into it later on, to understand and get the skills, appropriate the skills to have difficult conversations, is because you don't want to be trying to figure out how to have a difficult conversations when you are in it. He actually used the analogy, it is like learning how to box or trying to learn boxing when you're in the ring, in the middle of a fight.
And that's
Not a good
something you
idea.
don't want to do.
You don't want to be in that space. So you want to get the skills, the awareness, the knowledge.
Sure.
Especially because this is not a question of if you're going to get into one, but a question of when. Hopefully we made a clear case of what they are and why we need to have them.